Hello, we are coming to you somewhat live and definitely on the drive. This is the debut episode of the Top Rope Podcast. The definitely not best podcast about wrestling, but we will sure try. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host and my dad. Dad!
Yo. What you gonna do, brother?
That's my dad. He's cool. He's bald.
Definitely bald.
Well, you need to shave your head's getting a little fuzzy. But let's get on topic.
What are we gonna talk about today?
We're going to talk about what happened yesterday.
Like yesterday or yesterday in history?
Yesterday in history.
2005. ECW. One Night Stand.
Yesterday was the 21st anniversary of the last true ECW event. It's old enough to drink.
And what an event it was.
And gamble. So today, this episode will be entirely dedicated to everything about One Night Stand 2005.
Where should we start?
I don't know. Start with the start.
Start with the start?
Well,
that's usually a good place to start.
Well, first we should give a little bit of background just for the younger audience who maybe hasn't quite seen it yet.
Or maybe isn't old enough to see it.
Yeah. I just saw it last night. And it was pretty awesome. We chose to watch that over SmackDown.
Well, to understand where you are today, you had to remember where you came from.
Yep.
So obviously a lot of people know ECW went out of business in 2001.
Very, very sad.
It was very sad. And between 2001 and 2005, fans in arenas all over the world, regardless of the promotion, whether it was WWE, who was the top dog obviously at the time because they owned ECW, they owned WCW, or if it was an independent show out there somewhere.
Or even TNA.
Or TNA. People chanted ECW constantly.
The fans just wanted it back. And finally, in 2005, their wish was granted.
When a few of the ECW alumni like Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, Paul Heyman, and others came to Vince and said, hey, let's do an ECW reunion show one time just to make the fans happy.
A one-night stand.
If I remember right, Vince was reluctant at first, but the guys just kept bringing it up until they wore him down, and he said, let's do it.
And I don't think Vince wanted Sandman to come in there and hit him with a Singapore cane.
Right?
That might hurt. And by might, I mean will.
And obviously they pulled out all the stops for that show. Brought all the heavy hitters. The big stars that everybody knew from ECW, like the Dudley Boys, and obviously the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu. And also ones that maybe some people had forgotten were in ECW, like Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit,
Rey Mysterio.
So One Night Stand gave us a little bit of everything that made ECW so special. You got the ultra violence, and then you got the technical wrestling skill. You got lucha action with Super Crazy and Rey Mysterio.
The fans
and
sure did
Psychosis.
love Super Crazy.
Super Crazy was an ECW staple for sure.
Too bad his run in WWE was short-lived.
Yeah. A lot of the ECW wrestlers didn't transition well to being in the WWE. It was a totally different world for them compared to what they were used to.
Yeah, there wasn't blood on every show.
And blood was something we definitely got at One Night Stand.
Therefore, that's why the guys who put the show together wanted to use the blood and guts ring apron. But Vince said, no.
He said nay nay. And that's okay. It wasn't needed. So One Night Stand 2005 was broadcast from the same place that the very last ECW pay-per-view had been broadcast from, the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. One block away from the most famous arena in the world, Madison Square Garden.
Yes, there was occasionally balls there.
Yes, back in the day.
And by balls, I mean dances.
And some people may not know this, but the original episodes of Monday Night Raw, back when it debuted, also were filmed in that exact same arena, the Hammerstein Ballroom. So it has a rich history of wrestling, not just ECW.
Wasn't it also where One Night Stand 06 was held?
Yes.
That wasn't true ECW.
No, that was after the huge success of the first One Night Stand, which part of the reason that some of the former ECW wrestlers pushed so hard for that was because WWE had released the DVD, The Rise and Fall of ECW. And in its first week, it became the best-selling WWE home video release of all time. I believe it has since been surpassed. But they sold millions of copies of that DVD. It was a two DVD set in that first week that it came out. Stores actually ran out of it. And it was promoted here and there on WWE programming, but it wasn't like heavily promoted.
The fans just really wanted some ECW action.
Mostly
some
it was
extreme
because
championship wrestling.
Yep. Mostly because it was promoted pretty heavily online. Like, it was on WWE.com that they were going to be releasing it.
Because yes, kids, the internet was a budding sapling of a tree at that point.
And WWE was really, not only were they the biggest, but they were one of the first wrestling promotions to really lean in to drawing people in on the internet. Between the old WWE.com way back in the day, when they wouldn't upload full matches, but there'd be clips and highlights from Raw and from SmackDown.
Kind of like the WWE's YouTube channel that exists today.
Yep.
Which is one of the most subscribed to YouTube channels in the world, with over 100 million subscribers.
That is correct. And then came WWE 24/7, which was one of the first online streaming channels, and the first to ever just focus on professional wrestling.
Very cool.
Now, it wasn't like the WWE Network, which followed a handful of years later, where you could just pull stuff up on demand. It was literally, they had their own programming that they would air. It would be classic events. It would be specials like Legends of Wrestling, where it was like a roundtable discussion with older and somewhat, more recent at that time superstars.
kind of like now's episode of Rivals or WWE Legends.
Yes, but instead of showing a lot more clips, it was a lot more talking. Most episodes were hosted by Mean Gene Okerlund, the probably quintessential voice of professional wrestling from the 1980s until the mid 2000s. It always, growing up, I always loved when I'd hear Mean Gene's voice come on the TV, because the guy was just so cool.
He was.
And the WWE 24/7 had a few other like programs on it as well, and it did well for what it was. Obviously, I didn't subscribe to it because I just didn't have the money at the time to do that, but obviously I did know of its existence. And then came the WWE Network. And at first it was just WWE programming. Then they started adding in other things like, ECW and some WCW, some NWA, some Jim Crockett promotions. Basically all these tape libraries that the WWE owned. They had started uploading this stuff to the young infancy of the WWE Network, and it exploded in popularity.
My dad even had the WWE Network on the PS3. It doesn't work anymore.
It does not. But at one point in time, I also couldn't afford to subscribe to the WWE Network at the time when it came out. But they did do a thing around, what was it? I think it was WrestleMania 21. So still when the network was pretty brand new. They gave you a month's free trial. So I'm like, well, free is the perfect price for me. So I snagged it.
Hey, that rhymed.
I know. I'm a master of words. So I snagged up that free trial. Your mom got a little annoyed with me with how much wrestling I watched in that month.
So?
It
was a free trial.
Right?
Come on.
I said to get it free for a month. I'm going to make the most of it.
PS3 is awesome.
Yes. Let's get back into talking about One Night Stand.
Yeah, we kind of got off topic. But we had to give a little bit of background.
Yes. So the show opens up with a shot of the Hammerstein Ballroom, and you hear the song Bodies by Drowning Pool, which became the theme for ECW when WWE resurrected it a year later.
No, wasn't that at the end, or was it at the start too?
It was at the start as well.
Oh, I think I might have missed that part. It was probably in the bathroom.
And then Joey Styles comes down to the ring, the voice of ECW.
He comes to the ring, and what does he say?
He welcomes the fans to ECW One Night Stand with tears in his eyes, not out of sadness, out of just pure joy that he got to do it one more time.
Because if you didn't know, he was the one and only announcer of the original ECW.
Very rarely in the original run of ECW did they ever have two people in the announce booth.
But let's be honest, you don't really need more than one. If you got one really good, commentator, it's really all you need.
That's correct. And Joey was so good at what he did. He perfectly fit the theme and the spirit of ECW. Now, a few times in the original ECW, I can remember that there were two people, was when they went to TNN, their first, major television deal, which
No, TNN does not mean Thunder News Network.
Nope, it was the Nashville network. And they promoted ECW very heavily when they first picked it up and as it was coming on, but shortly after that, they rarely ever ran a commercial for it, and it was used as the lead-in to Rollerball. So it was part of their Friday night sports block. So you had ECW at 7 o'clock, and then you had Rollerball at 8. I don't remember if Rollerball was an hour or 2 hours, because I didn't watch it more than once. But ECW was
probably the only time you
hour.
watched it was because, like, it was just after ECW.
I think I watched because they both debuted on the same night. So I think I watched Rollerball after that. But really, TNN picking up ECW was to test the waters if their viewer base truly was into professional wrestling, because they wanted to get Monday Night Raw, because the rights to Monday Night Raw were coming up. And they had told Paul Heyman, all these things. Oh, you guys are going to be huge. We're going to start you off at an hour. Now, if you've seen the rise and fall of ECW, you'll know a lot of this story. But if you haven't, TNN had promised the world to ECW that we're going to start off at an hour, and we're going to bring you guys to 2 hours, and we're going to make this a huge show. We want to see you guys become as big as the WWE. Well, that was all a lie. They stopped.
Dang you, corporate companies.
TNN had stopped financing the show, leaving Paul Heyman to have to try to scramble to pick up, find money to run the show every week. They didn't promote it anymore. They still aired it, but they wouldn't do anything else for it. So unfortunately, it caused, massive amounts of debt that Paul Heyman and ECW couldn't pay off, so they ended up folding. And Vince bought the rights to the company. Now, Vince did own a stake of ECW since about 1996.
Which was about when the Extreme Championship Wrestling part of ECW had started. Because before it was Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Yep, when they had really started getting traction. And then in 1993, they became Extreme Championship Wrestling. Paul Heyman had been with the company for a little while. And Todd Gordon, who was the owner of Eastern Championship Wrestling, turned over all the creative decisions, all the booking, and all of it to Paul Heyman. And Paul said, "I want to take this company in a different direction. We want to do something different, something to stand out."
And so he did.
And he brought in these wrestlers from all over the world. ECW was the first to really bring the lucha style from Mexico to the United States, to showcase that.
And he wasn't even going to know if this was going to be a good idea or not. But it ended up being a very good idea.
Yep.
A lot of other wrestling companies followed suit pretty quick.
WCW was very quick to snap up all the luchadors, like Rey Mysterio and Psychosis.
Although at the time, Rey Mysterio Jr.
Yes. Eddie Guerrero. Brought in, they came and swooped up all of those guys. Now the Eddie from back in the ECW days, and even for that part, the WCW days, was not the same Eddie that we knew and loved in WWE. Yes, it was the same guy, but the character just wasn't there yet. But thank God Vince saw a vision in Eddie and just let him craft it.
Eddie was one of the best luchadors of all time. He may not have worn a mask, but you don't have to wear a mask to be a luchador.
You don't.
But anybody can be a luchador. Ahem, El Grande Americano. Ahem.
Yes. Although most luchadors are not as tall as El Grande Americano. Do you remember what the first match from One Night Stand was?
I kind of forgot. It was just all really good. I know that.
Actually, to be honest, I can't remember either. Was it Jericho?
Yeah, I think it was Jericho and Chris Benoit.
No, it wasn't. Gosh, what was it? Was it the three-way dance?
Yeah, that's what it
Tajiri,
was.
Super Crazy, and Little Guido?
Yeah, I think.
Pretty sure that was the first match.
Put it in the comments which one it was. We don't know.
Yeah, drop it in the comments. Either way, in true ECW fashion, they started off hot.
Which is what you want to do with the opening match. Gotta set the mood for the night.
That's right, you gotta set the tone.
If the first match isn't good, then the viewers might lose interest in the episode.
And you definitely don't want that to happen. Now let's see, what were some other... Well, Tajiri won the three-way dance. Tajiri was a ECW staple. He had came to WWE after the closure of ECW. And
The original?
yes. And he actually was showcased pretty well on WWE programming, at least I thought. But that was because of how much, respect and love I had for him from watching him in ECW back in the day.
Great wrestler.
He was a great wrestler. I think he just recently retired, like a year or two ago.
Just something about those ECW guys. They just kept going. They just don't want to retire.
Yep. They were built different. Now, another one of the big reasons ECW actually got the exposure and the traction it did was because of one Terry Funk. Now, Terry was already at the twilight of his career at this point. But he knew Paul from their days back in WCW and before that the NWA. And Paul had called him, asked him, hey, he's like, I'm running this promotion in Philadelphia. Would you like to come down and check it out? Terry said absolutely, I'll come. So he came down, he watched it, he liked what he saw. He ended up joining the roster because he said he wanted to make that place succeed. And he knew, being as big of a name as he was, that he could do it. Terry had wrestled all over the world at this point.
All over the place.
I don't think there was a promotion that didn't have at least one match with Terry Funk in it at that time. He traveled the territories. He went all around the world. And he was a superstar everywhere he went.
He was an amazing wrestler.
He was. And he wasn't always... I mean, he was always a brawler and bled a lot, but he wasn't really what you would have considered, the extreme in the form of what ECW was, other than his stuff in Japan, where he did multiple, death matches and all these ultra-violent matches, your barbed wire matches, things like that. So he had made a name for himself other places for that kind of style, but never quite like that in the U.S. And boy, did he make an impact doing that stuff in the United States. Mm-hmm. I still to this day think about the Born to be Wired match, or the match from Born to be Wired, the barbed wire match with him and Sabu. Terry Funk's in his 50s. He'd already been wrestling for over 30 years by this point. And he's in there with a guy half of his age. And they're wrapping themselves in barbed wire and putting each other through tables and all of that. Terry Funk almost lost an eye that night when Sabu did his leg drop onto Terry on a table while Sabu was all wrapped in barbed wire, and they got stuck to each other. And one barb was just poking thankfully lightly, into Terry Funk's eyelid. The referees and some of the ring crew had to really work to get the two of them unstuck. That was also the night when Sabu hit the barbed wire and ripped his arm open, which ended up requiring over 100 stitches to close up the wound. But that's when he had wrapped his arm in athletic tape and just kept on wrestling because he was insane.
Pretty much all the guys in ECW were.
Yes, they were.
Nobody would quit.
And let's talk for a second about something you don't see in wrestling today. Unprotected chair shots to the head.
Another staple of ECW.
Well, all wrestling at that time.
Yeah, because people didn't really care. They didn't care if a bunch of people did.
Back then, they didn't understand the long-term effects of concussions.
Back in the 1900s.
But One Night Stand had so many unprotected chair shots to the head. And they weren't just little love taps.
Most of them were just in one match, too.
Yes. There was a lot of them. Almost any match that involved chairs coming out, someone left concussed that night. But then, like we said earlier, let's talk about the match between Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit.
That was an amazing match.
It was.
Very, very sad that both of them are gone.
Yes. And I will die on this hill. And you can throw shade in the comments if you want, but I know how he left the world was horrific and unforgivable. But Chris Benoit was an amazing wrestler inside that ring.
And I still think that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
I think one day he may, but he might not ever get in. At least in the WWE Hall of Fame. Maybe one of the other ones, like maybe the International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame or something like that. Yes, we should never forget what he did on his last night on Earth, but at the same time, he should be remembered for the work he did in the ring.
He was another one of the greats.
And actually, you know what? I think you were right. I think Chris Jericho was in the opening match. I can't remember offhand who he wrestled. Yes, I think...
Who did he wrestle?
Because I think the three-way dance is actually the second match. Anyway, neither here nor there.
I know
Chris
that
Jericho came
either of
out
those
in
were
his
first and
classic...
second.
Yep, in his classic Lionheart gear, which is what he used when he was in ECW. And what he used anywhere else he wrestled up until that point. Whether it was Canada or Japan or Mexico, he was always the Lionheart, Chris Jericho.
Pretty much all the promotions.
Yep. He used Lionheart for a little bit when he came to WCW. But then he dropped that and was just Chris Jericho. Then he was the man of 1,004 holds as a rib to his feud at that time with Dean Malenko, who was widely known as the man of 1,000 holds. Still one of his best segments on Nitro ever was the night he came out with the really long sheet of paper and he started reading off all these wrestling holds. It was hilarious. Then obviously throughout One Night Stand there was a lot of recaps showing video clips of ECW from back in the day. They did a remembrance of some of the superstars, they weren't superstars in ECW. They were just wrestlers. But the wrestlers that had passed on
from the original days of ECW.
Yep. Gave tribute to them, which is sad to think that a good handful of the guys that you saw that night at One Night Stand aren't alive anymore either.
Very, very sad.
But they lived a different lifestyle, too.
Yeah. Think about Extreme Rules in WWE. That was literally every single match in ECW.
Yep. And Joey Styles made reference to it a lot at One Night Stand, that in ECW there are no count outs. There's no disqualifications. And for the most part that was true of just about any match in ECW. You won by pinfall or submission. That was it.
Keeping it the good type of wrestling.
The referees didn't call for the match to stop because the guy was bleeding profusely or this and that.
Couldn't see someone's face because it was covered in blood.
Yep. While its time in the spotlight was relatively short, ECW did truly revolutionize professional wrestling.
Yes, it did.
Because of the popularity of ECW is how we got the Attitude Era. WCW had turned to being a little more edgy, a little more violent. After they had kind of put the blood and all that on the back burner, save for specific matches and storylines. But yes, they did revolutionize and brought it, forced the big two to make changes to hold on to their audience, because ECW was growing in popularity without being on a major cable network that was broadcast around the country. They had their syndication, which was never on really the time most people could watch. Because of the fact it was so violent, it would be on very late at night.
Gotta keep them kids' eyes from seeing all the blood.
Yep.
I guess. Don't want the kids to have nightmares.
And they did
youngins.
revolutionary storylines back then too. Like a lot of people remember obviously the custody of Dominic storyline in WWE between Eddie and Rey Mysterio. Well, they got the inspiration from that, from a storyline that happened between Raven and the Sandman, where Sandman had Raven corrupted the Sandman's son into hating his father and making Raven his, saying Raven was his true dad. Now there was never like a custody match, but they used it in a storyline.
They never disputed it in a civilized way, which was a ladder match.
That's true. The most civilized way to handle something like that is a ladder match.
Yep.
That's another hill I'll die on.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to handle something, it better be a ladder. But back to One Night Stand again. I can go off on tangents about the original ECW all day long.
We're already at 36 minutes and we haven't even covered like the third match yet.
Oh, that'll happen. I mean, every match of that show was spectacular, and they were all put together mostly by Tommy Dreamer. He coordinated getting all these guys to come. Nobody thought we'd get to see Sabu that night.
But then he kind of just like appeared.
He did.
The lights went out and he just appeared.
And from what I remember from a story that Tommy Dreamer told on Busted Open, Sabu was not coming. He said no, he wasn't going to be there. And he showed up less than 5 minutes before he made his appearance. He got there, he saw Paul. Paul's like, get ready. So they quick set up the whole thing with how Sabu was going to be introduced. And I think everybody in that crowd knew that when those lights went out, when they came on, Sabu was going to be there in that ring.
Pointing to the sky.
Yep. We had the very passionate promo from Rob Van Dam, who was not able to compete that night as much as he wanted to because he had recently had a knee surgery.
And he was talking about how sad it was.
Yep.
Talking about how he'd rather miss WrestleMania.
Which, to ECW, One Night Stand was their WrestleMania.
It was their one singular WrestleMania.
Yep. Their first one before that, I would say, would have been their very first pay-per-view, Barely Legal. But I still think that paled in comparison to how much fun I think every one of the ECW stars had that were at One Night Stand.
Mm-hmm. It was kind of like more or less a super WrestleMania.
Yep.
A 4-night WrestleMania.
All packed into one 2.5 hour show.
Yep.
But honestly, it didn't need to go any longer than it did.
Yeah, it didn't need like 5 hours and 37 minutes. Because I think that's how long WrestleMania 35 was.
Yeah, it was something like that.
If I got that correct, go look it up now and subscribe if I got it correct.
Another thing that I loved about One Night Stand was ooh, that's a nice Mustang. Sorry,
You should subscribe anyways.
I got distracted by that Mustang.
Right.
It's literally right there at the stoplight. You dweeb. Anyway.
We don't know how to pay attention.
I get distracted easily sometimes. Depends on what it is. But anyway, they kept the vibe of ECW with that pay-per-view. Yes, there was probably a little bit more lighting than the classic ECW, but they did keep it fairly true to the original. With the, there was no pyro, there was no, laser lights flashing through the crowd. You got to see the crowd at the beginning. The lights on them went darker, just focused on the entryway and the ring. Because if you think about the original ECW, they didn't have the budget that WCW or WWF had. So Paul Heyman's motto was always accentuate the positives and hide the negatives. Focus on the ring and let the wrestlers tell their stories. And that's what made it so special. It was gritty, it was different. They weren't in these huge arenas with 20,000 people. It was a bingo hall that maybe fit 500 people at best. And that was probably breaking the fire laws because that was too many people. When you factor in that they have an entryway and a wrestling ring in there.
A table on fire.
Yep.
On purpose. Which got put out because someone was put through it.
Correct. Usually Spike Dudley. Or Tommy Dreamer.
The best Dudley boy.
The best Dudley. Speaking of the Dudleys, they were there because
they closed out the show.
Yep, in a tag team match.
Versus Tommy Dreamer and the Sandman, which he's called the Sandman because he used to have a surfer character.
That's correct. We also got run-ins from the Blue World Order. Balls Mahoney and Axel Rotten. It was quite the Donnybrook. But let's talk about one of the other matches. These two were like peanut butter and jelly. They always brought out the best versions of themselves when they wrestled each other. And that was Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka.
That was like the fourth match.
You hear...
I think there was 5.
You hear sometimes, that guys like Mark Henry and then, say, two hosses, slapping meat. When they're talking about, your super heavyweights in, long-running blood feuds with each other. Well, that was Awesome and Tanaka. Those two always beat the ever-loving hell out of each other in every match. Like, I'm pretty sure they weren't throwing, like, wrestling punches. I think those two were legitimately just, like, slugging each other. One, because they knew each other so well. And two, they were just that tough.
That was the one with all the chair shots.
Yes.
To the head.
Many violent chair shots to the head.
Mostly to Tanaka.
Yes. Or Mike Awesome hitting the Awesome Bomb outside of the ring and Tanaka only hit a corner of the table. He didn't hit it right in the center like you see most guys. That had to have hurt like hell.
And of course, these aren't your like WWE tables where all it is the legs. Nope, you got a big metal ring around it.
Yep. These were real legitimate tables.
And yes, they broke too.
Why am I not surprised that Tesla couldn't figure out where they needed to turn? Anyway,
I don't know.
Almost caused an accident here on the highway. That'd have been no bueno.
I would have had to extremely wrestle someone.
That's right.
Might need to use the windshield.
Sabu leg drop right through the windshield.
Of the Tesla, not our truck. Pretty truck.
Pretty truck. And then we had the invasion of the SmackDown and the Raw superstars.
Led by JBL and Eric Bischoff. Everybody hated Eric Bischoff. That was just his character.
Honestly, of the entire show, I think that was one of the few misses, was having them there.
Yeah, but it led to the cool part at the end.
It did. You got the big brawl between the ECW originals and the WWE guys.
Because, of course, at the end of the match, when Sandman won, he said, "Someone get me a beer."
No, the Dudleys won.
The Dudleys won?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Someone won.
But Sandman
did ask
was
for
all
a beer.
beat up. Yep. Tommy Dreamer laying there on the mat after just being put through the flaming table, just gushing blood, just completely destroyed, laying there on the mat. Sandman comes in and tries to help him in the only way he knows how, and that's asking for a beer.
So he said, "Someone get me a beer." And who else likes beer?
Stone Cold Steve Austin. You heard the glass break. The crowd popped huge. Not quite as huge as they did when Sandman's music hit. Which, if you watch it on Netflix or wherever you watch it now,
it's kind of an off-brand version of Enter Sandman.
Yep.
But if you do listen closely through the commentators' microphones, which was
Joey
Styles and Mick Foley came out, so it wasn't just Joey Styles.
Yep, Foley came out afterwards.
But yeah, you could kind of hear the real version of Enter Sandman through the microphones.
But if you watched it when it happened live, or you have the original pressing of the DVD of One Night Stand like I do, you get to hear Enter Sandman.
And all the rest of the wrestlers' music that wasn't like the toned down or like royalty-free instrumental version.
Yep.
Except for Bodies by Drowning Pool, you get to hear the actual version of that.
Yes. Now, any other arena in the world, Stone Cold would get a bigger reaction than the Sandman would. But being that this was ECW, this was in a building they frequently had shows at, and he was one of the quintessential legends of ECW. When you heard that opening to Enter Sandman, that place went insane.
So he was a Sandman.
I think the Hammerstein, held like 1,500 people or something like that. Maybe slightly more. I don't remember for sure. But that sounded like 100,000 people, fans at WrestleMania in Dallas.
If, say, Stone Cold were to come out.
When Sandman's music hit. And it was spectacular.
Like, think about if Stone Cold or The Undertaker were to come out now. that is what you would hear. With all the, 15,000 fans or whatever.
Really at any time throughout the rise into superstardom that Stone Cold had. Nobody got a louder reaction than he did when his music hit.
She was just different. But yeah, so he came out. And
Sandman's like, give me a beer. And Stone Cold's like, I'll give you a damn beer, just hold on a minute.
Called out the entire ECW roster from the back. They're all gonna drink a beer together.
Yep, they were gonna have a beer bash. And then Stone Cold
stupid Eric Bischoff had to be annoying.
And then Stone Cold got the idea to bait the WWE stars that were there to come down to the ring and try to beat up the ECW guys. Well, that didn't work out well for them.
Which that included Edge, Kurt Angle, who for some reason just took off his shirt for no reason.
He took off his shirt
the middle of the show.
Halfway through the show. But that was Kurt. That was just what he did. Which is funny that Kurt Angle was so anti-ECW at that show, and then a year later
he was on the ECW roster.
Yeah. When they came back into existence, completely ran by WWE. But all in all, One Night Stand 2005 was the perfect wrap up of the legacy of ECW. It had the grit, it had the everything everyone loved about the original ECW in one glorious night, ran by the people who knew it best, performed by the wrestlers who had been there and walked through those hallowed doors of the ECW arena at the corner of Swanson and Rittner in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Oh, and at the end of the show, Eric Bischoff went over by the commentator's table. He started commentating. He was being annoying.
Stone Cold asked Mick Foley to grab him, bring him down to the ring. Mick said, okay. And that's exactly what he did.
Mick Foley came out as Cactus Jactus that night.
Cactus Jactus.
Yes, I know the name was Cactus Jack.
Eric Bischoff proceeded to get a 3D, a diving headbutt from Chris Benoit, and then eventually he got the Stone Cold Stunner.
Which, as you know, Chris Benoit got the diving headbutt from El Grande Americano from his 100 years of wrestling.
Yep.
Which was all one, just one El Grande Americano.
Yep. The one true El Grande Americano. Another time we could get into talking about One Night Stand 2006. But
yeah, we're already at 54 minutes, so
yeah. But we're not here today to talk about that. We're here to talk about the true, the one and only One Night Stand. Yes, 2006 was called ECW One Night Stand, but it was not the same.
Just like Hot Wheels, it's not the same without the flame.
Correct.
And the flame was like Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Dudley Boys.
Yep.
Sabu. Rest in peace, Sabu.
Rest in peace, Balls Mahoney. Rest in peace, New Jack. New Jack was not at that show, though.
Yeah. But hey, he might be getting an action figure soon.
I think he is. He is that. They actually, over the past couple of years, WWE has actually like acknowledged his existence. Unfortunately, it took him passing away for it to happen, but you know, they put him in the video games.
Speaking of passing away, I met Hulk Hogan last year. We both did.
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, didn't personally meet him. Like, we didn't go up to talk to him or anything.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk to him. I didn't tell him how
He was throwing his beers around at people.
much I loved and respected him, and how he helped make me a wrestling fan. But anyway, so I think that wraps up our look back and my reflections and your reflections.
Mostly you, because you're like the expert.
Yep. On ECW One Night Stand. Join us next time.
Also, yeah, so if you liked this, put it in the comments. If you want to see more, good, you're going to see more. I don't care if this doesn't do well. We're doing more. This is what I wanted. Also, if you're an original watcher of the CNET 4912 channel, which I don't know, this is probably like when I had like 3 subscribers maybe. My dad, my mom, and I don't know, someone. No idea who was the 3rd subscriber. But yeah, at that point, it was Wrestle Talk, which I didn't know at the time, but there already is a Wrestle Talk. So it ended up becoming Wrestling Talk. Let's be honest, that's a horrible name.
Yeah.
So we switched it to the Top Rope Podcast. Whenever this gets posted, it'll have a logo. Sorry, we don't have the logo on hand, so that's why the entire time you're just staring at a black screen. Deal with it.
Later, losers.
Yep, later, losers. Like and subscribe, or I'll come find you and Stone Cold Stunner you. Goodbye and good morning. I don't know.